Battle to salvage whatever it is that remains of the rule of law in America. It just may go down as one of those shots heard around the world. And the news wasn't extraordinary because of what he was doing in retiring. It is how he did it. After 40 years on the bench, a federal judge appointed by Ronald Reagan with decades of experience overseeing criminal cases of mobsters and lawmakers alike is retiring from the bench so that he can sound the alarm and take a stand against Donald Trump's assault on the rule of law in America. Former federal judge Mark L. Wolf writes this in The Atlantic over the weekend, quote, "I no longer can bear to be restrained by what judges can say publicly or do outside the courtroom. President Donald Trump is using the law for partisan purposes, targeting his adversaries while sparing his friends and donors from investigation, prosecution, and possible punishment. This is contrary to everything that I have stood for in my more than 50 years in the Department of Justice and on the bench. The White House's assault on the rule of law is so deeply disturbing to me that I feel compelled to speak out. Silence, for me, is now intolerable." Judge Wolf's point of no return moment comes when Donald Trump's efforts and campaign to destroy the rule of...
Okay, so picture this. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, second in line to the presidency, walks into a New York courtroom, and within minutes, the whole room goes silent because the judge just threatened someone with arrest. Yeah, you heard that right. Arrest in the middle of Donald Trump's criminal trial, and Johnson, Trump's biggest ally in Congress, just froze. Now look, I know what you're thinking. Another Trump court story, another day, another drama. But hold on, because this one's different. This isn't just some random hearing. This is the Speaker of the House, the most powerful Republican in America right now, standing in a courtroom where a judge is basically saying, break my rules and you're going to jail. Come on, that's insane. So here's what happened November 11th. Just days ago, Mike Johnson shows up at Trump's hush money trial in Manhattan, not quietly either. He marches right in there, sits down, and immediately starts talking to reporters, calling the whole thing a sham, attacking Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer, who's now testifying against him. Johnson goes hard, says Cohen's on a mission for personal revenge, says he's not credible, says this trial is a joke. But here's the thing, while Johnson's out there doing his thing, inside that courtroom, the tension is off the charts because just the day before the judge made it crystal clear that anyone, and I mean anyone, who violates the gag order or breaks court rules could face arrest, not a fine, not a warning, but arrest. And that threat was hanging in the air like a storm cloud when Johnson walked in. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Law is coming at us fast and furiously with disturbing new developments every single day. Today, there's brand new reporting on the Trump administration testing a favorite conspiracy theory of Donald Trump's in a court of law. New York Times reporting this, quote, "Far-right influencers have been hinting in recent weeks that they have finally found a venue in Miami and a federal prosecutor in Jason A. Redding Quinones to pursue long-promised charges of a quote-unquote grand conspiracy against Donald Trump's adversaries. Their theory of the case, still unsupported by the evidence, that a cabal of Democrats and deep state operatives, possibly led by President Barack Obama, has worked to destroy Trump in a years-long plot spanning the inquiry into his 2016 campaign to the charges he faced after leaving office. MSNBC is reporting that more than 30 subpoenas have been issued, including for former director of the CIA, John Brennan. Not only has John Brennan denied any wrongdoing, but 2 previous investigations have failed to find any evidence of any crimes in the way the Russia investigation was handled or pursued. Neither John Durham, the special counsel handpicked and appointed by Donald Trump's attorney general in his first term, Bill Barr, nor the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee investigation, chaired by none other than Donald Trump's now Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, found anything that hinted at or merited criminal investigation or prosecution. But if prosecuting his political critics and opponents is one side of this ugly coin, quote, sparing his friends and donors from investigation, prosecution, and possible punishment, as Judge Wolf writes, is the other. Announced over the weekend pardons by Donald Trump for scores of his allies, the ones involved in the plot to overturn his 2020 election defeat. 77 pardons in total.
Are you kidding me? The Speaker of the House, in a position where one wrong word, one slip up, could land him in handcuffs, and he still showed up? Now, some people are calling him brave, others are calling him reckless, but here's what nobody's talking about. Why did he really go? What was the point? Because let me tell you, it wasn't just to support his buddy Donald. This is bigger than that, way bigger. This is about the entire Republican Party rallying around Trump like he's some kind of political martyr. This is about turning a criminal trial into a campaign event, even though Trump's already in his second term and can't run again. This is about the weaponization narrative, the idea that Democrats and judges and prosecutors are all working together to take down conservatives, and Johnson walking into that courtroom knowing the judge just threatened arrest. That was the whole point, to show defiance, to show loyalty, to show that Republicans won't back down. But then, when that arrest threat was actually mentioned in court, something changed. Johnson went quiet. People in the room said he looked frozen, like he suddenly realized, oh wait, this judge isn't playing around. This could actually happen. And for a guy who's usually so loud, so confident, so ready to fight, that moment of silence spoke volumes. Now MAGA world had thoughts. Oh boy, did they have thoughts. Some Trump supporters went after Johnson, said he didn't go hard enough, didn't defend Trump strongly enough, called him weak, called him a fake ally. Meanwhile, the other side is losing their minds for different reasons. They're saying Johnson crossed the line, that he's undermining the justice system, that he's turning the Speaker's office into Trump's personal PR machine. This is wild. And look, I get it. Politics is messy. It always has been. But this feels different because we're not talking about a senator showing up or a governor or even the vice president. We're talking about the Speaker of the House, the guy who's supposed to be above the fray, the guy who runs Congress, and he's sitting in a criminal courtroom acting like Trump's defense attorney while a judge is threatening people with arrest. Can you believe this? The whole scene was absolutely bonkers. You've got reporters everywhere, cameras outside, security all over the place, and right in the middle of it all, Mike Johnson looking like he just realized he walked into a trap, because that's kind of what happened. He thought he was going there to make Trump look good, to make himself look loyal, to score political points with the base, but instead he ended up looking like someone who just got a reality check from a judge who wasn't impressed by his title or his politics. And the timing of all this, that's what makes it even crazier. This happened right as Trump's trial was hitting its most dramatic moments. Witnesses were testifying, evidence was piling up, the prosecution was building their case, and instead of letting the legal process play out, Johnson decided to insert himself right into the middle of it, like he thought his presence would somehow change the outcome, like he thought he could intimidate the judge or the jury just by showing up. Yeah, right, that's not how courts work. That's not how any of this works. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break this whole thing down. We're going to talk about what really happened in that courtroom, why Johnson went, what the arrest threat actually means, and why this moment, this frozen moment, could change everything about how Republicans handle Trump's legal problems going forward. Because trust me, this story is about way more than just one court appearance. This is about power. This is about loyalty. This is about how far politicians will go to protect their guy, even when the stakes are this high, even when arrest is on the table. Let's dive in. All right, so let's get into the details, because the more you look at this story, the crazier it gets. And I promise you, most people are missing the real angle here. They're focused on the drama, the headlines, the spectacle. But underneath all that, there's something much bigger happening, something that could reshape how politics and the legal system interact for years to come. First, let's talk about Mike Johnson himself, because understanding him is key to understanding why this whole thing matters. Johnson became Speaker back in late 2023, after that total circus with Kevin McCarthy getting booted. Remember that? Republicans couldn't agree on a leader. They cycled through candidates. It was a mess. And then Johnson, this relatively unknown guy from Louisiana, steps up and suddenly everyone's like, okay, sure, let's try him. Now, Johnson's always been conservative, like really conservative, but he wasn't seen as a bomb thrower. He was more of a policy guy, a behind-the-scenes operator, someone who could maybe bring the party together. And for a while, he did okay. He kept the caucus from imploding. He passed some bills. He avoided the constant drama that plagued McCarthy. But then Trump's legal problems started piling up, and Johnson had a choice to make. Does he stay neutral? Does he keep his distance? Or does he go all in? He went all in. And that decision, that's what led us to this courtroom moment. Because Johnson didn't just support Trump from Washington. He didn't just make statements. He physically showed up in New York at the trial, the highest ranking Republican official to do so. Think about that. The Speaker of the House taking time away from running Congress to sit in a criminal courtroom for a president who's already serving his second term, who can't even run for office again. That's commitment or obsession. Depends on how you look at it. So why did he go? Well, officially, Johnson said he was there to expose the trial as a sham, to defend Trump against what he called political persecution, to show solidarity with the president under attack. But come on, let's be real. This was about something else. This was about Johnson securing his own position. Because in today's Republican Party, your loyalty to Trump determines everything. Your committee assignments, your fundraising, your political future, all of it. And Johnson knows that. He knows that if he wants to keep his job as Speaker, he needs Trump's blessing and Trump's base behind him. But here's where it gets interesting. The judge in this case, Judge Juan Merchan, he's not messing around. In the days leading up to Johnson's visit, Merchan had been dealing with repeated violations of his gag order. Trump kept posting about witnesses, about jurors, about court staff, and Merchan kept fining him. $1,000 here, $1,000 there. But Trump didn't stop, so Merchan escalated. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, next time someone breaks my rules, we're not doing fines anymore. We're talking about jail time, arrest, contempt of court, the whole thing. Now that threat wasn't directed specifically at Johnson, it was aimed at Trump and his team. But the timing, oh man, the timing. Because Johnson showed up right after that warning was issued, and suddenly everyone in that courtroom knew one wrong move, one violation, and things could get real fast. This is wild. Like imagine being Johnson. You fly to New York, you're ready to make a big statement, and then you realize, wait, the judge just said he'll arrest people, and I'm about to start talking about this case publicly. That's gotta mess with your head. And that's exactly what happened. According to people who were there, Johnson walked in, confident, but as the proceedings went on, as the judge reiterated his warnings, Johnson's whole demeanor changed. He got quieter, more careful. He stayed in the courtroom for a bit, but he wasn't his usual fiery self. He looked, and this is the word people kept using, frozen, like he suddenly understood the stakes, like he realized this wasn't just a political game anymore, this was actual law with actual consequences. Now let's talk about Michael Cohen, because Johnson specifically went after him, called him a liar, said he's seeking revenge. And look, Cohen's history is complicated. He was Trump's fixer for years. He did all kinds of shady stuff. He went to prison for it, and now he's testifying against Trump. So yeah, his credibility is questionable. Everyone knows that. But here's the thing, the prosecution isn't relying only on Cohen. They've got documents, they've got bank records, they've got other witnesses. Cohen's just one piece of a bigger puzzle, but Johnson doesn't mention any of that. He just attacks Cohen's character, which fine, that's politics, that's what lawyers do. But Johnson's not a lawyer in this case. He's the Speaker of the House, and him standing outside a courtroom, attacking a witness while a trial is ongoing, that raises questions, serious questions about whether he's interfering with the judicial process, about whether he's trying to intimidate witnesses, about whether he's crossing ethical lines. Are you kidding me? The Speaker of the House potentially interfering with the criminal trial? That's not normal. That's not okay. In MAGA world? Oh, they had opinions. Some hardcore Trump supporters loved it. They said Johnson was finally showing some backbone, finally standing up to the system. But others, and this surprised me, others were furious. They said Johnson didn't go far enough, that he should have been more aggressive, that he should have called the judge corrupt, that he should have demanded Trump's immediate release. Like what? These people wanted Johnson to basically commit contempt of court himself? To dare the judge to arrest him too? That's the level of loyalty they expect now. It's insane. Meanwhile, Democrats and legal experts are watching all this and just shaking their heads. They're saying this is unprecedented, that no speaker has ever done anything like this before, that Johnson's turning the office into a partisan weapon, and they're right. This is unprecedented. We've never seen a speaker show up at a criminal trial like this, not for Nixon, not for Clinton, never. Johnson broke new ground here, and not in a good way. But here's what really gets me, the judge's arrest threat. That's the part everyone's focusing on. But think about what that actually means. It means the judicial system is so fed up with Trump and his allies, so tired of the games, the delays, the violations, that they're willing to use their most extreme power, arrest, to maintain order. That's huge. That shows you how badly this trial has gone off the rails, how much Trump has pushed the boundaries, and how desperate judges are becoming to maintain control of their own courtrooms. And Johnson walked right into that, knowing all of it. Which makes you wonder, was he brave or was he stupid? Because there's a fine line between standing by your principles and putting yourself in unnecessary danger. And when that danger includes potential arrest, potential jail time, potential destruction of your career, you gotta ask, is Trump really worth it? Is any politician worth that kind of risk? The other thing that's wild about all this, the Republicans who showed up before Johnson, there were a few, some House members, some senators, but none of them had Johnson's title. None of them had his responsibilities. So when they showed up and made fools of themselves, it was embarrassing, but it wasn't catastrophic. But Johnson, He's the speaker. He's supposed to be a statesman. He's supposed to represent the entire House of Representatives, not just the MAGA wing, not just Trump's loyalists, everyone. And by showing up at that trial, by attacking witnesses, by calling the whole process a sham, he abandoned that responsibility. He chose Trump over the institution he's supposed to lead. And that's going to have consequences, long-term consequences that we're only starting to see. Okay? So let's break this down into the key points you need to understand, because this story has layers, and if you don't see all of them, you're missing the bigger picture. So here we go. Point 1. This is about normalizing political interference in the legal system. Johnson showing up at that trial, attacking witnesses, calling it a sham, that's not just support, that's interference. And the more Republicans do this, the more it becomes normal, the more people accept it. And that's dangerous because the whole point of having an independent judiciary is that politics stays out of it. Trials are supposed to be about facts, evidence, law, not about which politician can yell the loudest. But we're losing that slowly, piece by piece, and Johnson's courtroom stunt is just another chip away at that foundation. Think about it like this. If the Speaker of the House can show up at a criminal trial and attack witnesses without consequences, what's next? Can senators do it? Can governors? Can the president himself just walk into a courtroom and start directing the proceedings? Where does it end? And yeah, I know Trump's already pushed these boundaries further than anyone thought possible, but Johnson doing it too. That's different because Johnson's supposed to be a check on executive power. He's supposed to represent Congress, an independent branch, but instead he's acting like Trump's employee, like he works for the White House instead of the American people. Can you believe this? Point 2. The arrest threat is a game changer because up until now, Trump and his allies could basically do whatever they wanted. Sure, they'd get fined, maybe face some legal fees, but nothing serious, nothing that would actually stop them. But jail time, arrest, that's different. That's real consequences. And Judge Merchan putting that on the table signals a shift. It says the judiciary is done playing games, done being pushed around, and it's ready to use its full power to maintain order. This is wild. Now, will it actually happen? Will anyone actually get arrested? Hard to say. Judges don't like putting people in jail for contempt. It's a last resort. It looks bad. It creates more problems than it solves usually. But the fact that Merchan even threatened it, that tells you how bad things have gotten, how out of control this trial has become, and it put Johnson in an impossible position because he went there to make a statement, to be bold, to show strength. But instead he had to sit there quiet, careful, frozen, because one wrong word could land him in a cell. That's gotta sting. And think about the message that sends to other Republicans, to other Trump allies. It says, hey, maybe think twice before you rush to New York to defend this guy. Maybe consider the consequences. Maybe realize that judges still have power, even over powerful politicians. And that's important because for too long, it's felt like nobody could touch these people like they were above the law. But Merchan's threat, that changed the calculation, that made it real, that made people like Johnson actually pause and think, even if just for a moment. Point 3, this exposes the Republican Party's Trump problem. And by problem, I mean they can't quit him, even when it's stupid, even when it's dangerous, even when he's literally in court facing criminal charges. They still line up behind him, still defend him, still sacrifice their own credibility to protect his, and Johnson's the perfect example. He's the Speaker of the House. He's got real power, real responsibilities, but he's using that power not to govern, not to pass legislation, not to help the American people, but to prop up one guy's legal defense. That's not leadership, that's servitude. And look, I get why they do it. Trump still controls the Republican base. His endorsement can make or break careers. His anger can end political futures. So Republicans fall in line. They have to, or at least they think they have to, but at what cost? Johnson risked contempt charges. He risked undermining the justice system. He risked his own reputation. All for what? A photo op. A headline? Trump's approval? Come on, there's got to be a line. And maybe, just maybe, that courtroom moment, that frozen moment, was Johnson realizing he crossed it. The polls show it too. Republican voters, they overwhelmingly support Trump, even through all the legal troubles, even through all the scandals. Their support barely wavers, so Republican politicians feel trapped. They know if they break with Trump, they'll lose their base, they'll get primaried, they'll be done, so they stick with him no matter what, no matter how bad it looks, no matter how much damage it does to their own credibility or to democratic institutions. It's a toxic cycle, and Johnson's courtroom appearance is just the latest example of how deep it goes. Point 4. This sets a terrible precedent for the future, because now every time a prominent Republican faces legal trouble, other Republicans are going to feel pressure to show up, to make a scene, to turn trials into political rallies, and that's bad for everyone. It's bad for the justice system, it's bad for public trust in courts, it's bad for democracy, Because if we can't have fair trials, if everything becomes political theater, then what's the point? What separates us from countries where powerful people just ignore the law whenever it's convenient? And it's not just Republicans. If they keep doing this eventually, Democrats will too. They'll say, well, Republicans did it first, so we can do it too. And then we're in a race to the bottom where nobody respects the courts, nobody follows the rules, and justice becomes whatever the most powerful people say it is. That's not a country I want to live in, and I bet you don't either. So what happens next? Well, Trump's trial continues. More witnesses, more evidence, more drama. Johnson goes back to Washington, back to being speaker. But this moment, this courtroom moment, it's going to follow him because he showed everyone exactly where his priorities are. And it's not with Congress, it's not with his constituents, it's with Trump. Only Trump, always Trump. And that arrest threat, that's hanging over everything now. Every Trump ally who thinks about showing up at court, they're going to remember what Merchant said. They're going to think twice, or at least they should, because the stakes just got real. The consequences just got serious, and playing games with the justice system just became a lot more dangerous. Are you kidding me? We're at a point where elected officials might get arrested for supporting a former president in his second term. That's where we are. That's American politics in 2025. Look, here's the bottom line. Mike Johnson went to that courtroom thinking he looked strong, thinking he scored political points, thinking he'd prove his loyalty to Trump in the base, but instead he looked scared. He looked out of his depth. He looked like a guy who suddenly realized he was in way over his head. In that frozen moment, that split second where he understood the danger, that's going to define him now, not as Trump's ally, not as the speaker, but as the guy who blinked when it mattered most. This story isn't over, not even close. Trump's got more trials coming, more legal battles, more chances for Republicans to decide how far they'll go, and every single one of them is going to remember Johnson in that courtroom, frozen, quiet, careful, and they're going to ask themselves, is it worth it? Is Trump really worth risking everything? We're about to find out, because the next few months, the next few trials, they're going to test every single Republican politician's loyalty and their survival instinct, and we'll see which one wins. The question isn't whether more Republicans will show up at Trump's trials. They will. The question is whether any of them will have the guts to break ranks, to say enough is enough, to put their oath to the Constitution above their loyalty to one man. And based on what we saw with Johnson, based on that frozen moment when reality hit him, I'm not holding my breath, but hope springs eternal. And maybe, just maybe, one of them will surprise us. Stay tuned, because this train ain't stopping anytime soon. And trust me, the next station is going to be even crazier than this one. See you in the next video.